8 days ago, China unveiled the latest variant of their DF-17 hypersonic missile, and it's completely changed the military balance in the Pacific. Pentagon officials are scrambling to reassess everything they thought they knew about missile defense because this weapon represents a fundamental shift in how we think about warfare. Now, if you've served in the Navy or worked with missile systems, you know how critical reaction time and interception capabilities are. The DF-17 throws all that conventional wisdom out the window. This isn't your standard ballistic missile following a predictable arc that defense systems can calculate and intercept. This hypersonic glide vehicle maneuvers in ways that make traditional missile defense systems virtually useless. What makes this weapon so significant is that China has fielded the world's first mobile hypersonic missile in active service. While we've been developing prototypes and running limited tests, China already has operational units equipped with weapons that our current defense systems simply can't handle effectively. The missile measures approximately 11 meters long and weighs around 15,000 kilograms. It's mounted on a 10x10 transporter erector launcher, making it completely road-mobile. China can move these weapons anywhere within their territory or deploy them to forward positions without the infrastructure requirements of traditional missile systems. For those familiar with Soviet mobile missile systems during the Cold War, this represents a similar intelligence challenge, except with capabilities that far exceed anything from that era. The technical specifications are genuinely concerning from a defense perspective. The DF-17 reaches speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 10, which translates to roughly 3,800 to 7,600 miles per hour. Its operational range extends from 1,800 to 2,500 kilometers, putting virtually every U.S. military installation in the Western Pacific within striking distance when launched from Chinese territory. What makes this weapon particularly challenging is its flight profile. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that follow high-arc trajectories, the DF-17's hypersonic glide vehicle flies at approximately 60 kilometers altitude, much lower than typical ballistic warheads. This depressed flight path keeps it below the optimal engagement envelope for many of our current missile defense systems while maintaining hypersonic speeds throughout most of its flight. The development timeline tells a story of sustained Chinese commitment to hypersonic technology. The first prototypes, initially designated Wu-14 by U.S. intelligence, were confirmed in January 2014. Over the next several years, China conducted at least 9 flight tests, with the first official DF-17 test taking place on November 1, 2017, launched from the Jiuquan Space Launch Center in Inner Mongolia. During that initial test, the missile's payload flew approximately 1,400 kilometers, with the hypersonic glide vehicle maintaining its 60-kilometer altitude throughout the flight. A second test followed just 2 weeks later. What's remarkable about these early tests was their apparent success rate, which contrasts sharply with the mixed results we often see in early-stage weapons development. The weapon made its public debut during China's National Day military parade on October 1, 2019. 18 DF-17 models were displayed on their launchers, representing 2 complete operational units. This wasn't just for show. By 2020, U.S. Air Force assessments confirmed that the DF-17 was the first hypersonic glide vehicle-equipped tactical ballistic missile in operational deployment anywhere in the world. China didn't stop there. In January 2021, they revealed an upgraded launch vehicle with an integrated cover system that completely enclosed the missile. This modification serves 2 purposes. It helps disguise the weapon system, making identification more difficult for reconnaissance assets, and it provides environmental protection, allowing deployment in extreme climates from sub-freezing conditions to desert environments. In 2022, Chinese state media announced a new variant described specifically as an aircraft carrier killer. For those who served on carriers or in carrier strike groups, you understand the implications. This variant reportedly includes enhanced onboard sensors specifically designed for engaging moving naval targets. Given that our entire Pacific strategy relies heavily on carrier strike group projection of power, this represents a direct challenge to fundamental assumptions about naval operations in contested waters. The March 8, 2026 unveiling shows yet another evolution. The footage released by Chinese state media reveals a DF-17 variant equipped with what appears to be an entirely new type of hypersonic glide vehicle, distinct from previous versions seen in the 2019 and 2025 military parades. Analysis suggests this may be a cost-reduced variant designed for mass production, which could dramatically increase the number of these weapons in China's arsenal. China now operates 5 different types of anti-ship ballistic missiles: the DF-21D, DF-26, DF-17, DF-27, and YJ-21. Each is specifically designed to target U.S. carrier strike groups and allied naval forces operating in contested waters. This isn't a single weapon system, it's a comprehensive anti-access strategy built around denying the U.S. Navy the ability to operate effectively in the Western Pacific. The technical challenge these weapons present cannot be overstated. General John Hyten, former Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee in March 2018 with a stark assessment: "We don't have any defense that could deny the employment of such a weapon against us." He described the hypersonic glide vehicle technology as a first-use weapon and noted that, from a technology perspective, it's pretty impressive. The maneuverability aspect is crucial to understanding why these weapons are so problematic for existing defense systems. Traditional ballistic missiles follow predictable trajectories governed by physics and gravity. Once you detect the launch and calculate the initial trajectory, you can predict where the warhead is going and position interceptors accordingly. The DF-17's hypersonic glide vehicle changes that equation entirely. This weapon can maneuver in both pitch and yaw throughout its flight, performing what U.S. defense officials have described as extreme maneuvers and evasive actions. One government official noted that in testing, a DF-17 warhead came within meters of its intended target, which is a level of accuracy that, combined with its maneuverability, makes interception extremely difficult with current technology. The testing disparity between China and the United States is equally concerning. According to General Hyten, in the last 5 years, China has carried out hundreds of hypersonic tests, while the U.S. has conducted just 9. In 2018, one U.S. official observed that China had conducted approximately 20 times the number of hypersonic weapons tests as the United States had in the preceding decade. This represents a massive investment in perfecting the technology and understanding its operational parameters. China's approach to developing this capability shows sophisticated strategic thinking. The DF-17 uses the rocket booster from the DF-16B short-range ballistic missile, demonstrating efficient use of existing technology rather than developing everything from scratch. The weapon is manufactured by the China Aerospace Science Industry Corporation, with development handled by their 10th Research Institute, also known as the Near Space Flight Vehicle Research Institute. The cost estimates for these weapons are particularly noteworthy. Industry estimates place the per-unit cost between $2 and $5 million, which is expensive by conventional artillery standards, but relatively affordable for a strategic weapons system. This cost range suggests that China could feasibly produce these weapons in significant quantities without breaking their defense budget. There's an ongoing debate about the true effectiveness of hypersonic weapons versus existing missile defense systems. Some experts argue that while hypersonic glide vehicles pose serious challenges for mid-course interception systems like SM-3 and ground-based interceptors, they still face substantial obstacles in the terminal phase. The extreme pressures encountered during the final approach limit maneuverability, and contemporary surface-to-air missile systems like THAAD, Patriot, and SM-6 are optimized for terminal phase interception. However, this argument misses a crucial point about operational reality. Even if terminal defenses retain some effectiveness, the compressed timeline for engagement and the unpredictable approach vectors of hypersonic glide vehicles create enormous challenges for defensive systems. The margin for error becomes razor-thin when dealing with weapons that can change course multiple times during their approach. The strategic implications extend far beyond individual weapon capabilities. The deployment of DF-17 units fundamentally alters the military balance in the Taiwan Strait and the broader Western Pacific. These weapons can strike U.S. military facilities in Japan and South Korea, Republic of China Armed Forces targets across the Taiwan Strait, and naval forces operating throughout the region. This creates what military planners call an anti-access area denial envelope that complicates any potential U.S. military response to regional conflicts. Recent developments have added new dimensions to this challenge. The Pentagon's 2026 National Defense Strategy notably downplays the China threat compared to previous versions, as the Trump administration seeks to focus on the Western Hemisphere. This represents a significant shift from the 2018 and 2022 strategies, which explicitly characterized China as a strategic competitor and emphasized long-term competition. Yet Pentagon assessments continue to acknowledge China's growing capabilities. The latest report states that China has the world's leading hypersonic missile arsenal and continued to advance the development of conventional and nuclear-armed hypersonic missile technologies during the past year. In some areas, particularly with carrier-killer hypersonic missiles, China's rocket force capabilities have already surpassed those of the United States. The broader nuclear context adds another layer of concern. China's nuclear warhead numbers have increased dramatically from 250 warheads in 2015 to 600 operational warheads today, which is the fastest rate of increase of any nuclear power. The DF-17 can carry either conventional or nuclear warheads, creating ambiguity that complicates crisis decision-making. In a conflict scenario, would an incoming DF-17 carry a conventional warhead targeting a military facility or a nuclear weapon? The detection and classification timeline may not provide enough time to make that determination. Arms control implications further complicate the picture. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty lapsed on February 5, 2026, and President Trump has indicated he wants to negotiate a better agreement that would include China and limit all Russian nuclear warheads. However, China has consistently refused to join trilateral arms control negotiations, arguing that their nuclear arsenal is far smaller than those of the United States and Russia. The intelligence and reconnaissance challenges posed by mobile hypersonic missiles like the DF-17 cannot be understated. Unlike fixed missile silos that can be continuously monitored by satellites, road mobile systems can be dispersed, hidden, and moved on short notice. During the Cold War, tracking Soviet mobile missiles required enormous intelligence resources and was never completely reliable. The DF-17 presents similar challenges, but with far more dangerous capabilities. Looking ahead, the March 8, 2026 variant represents what may be the beginning of mass production and wider deployment of hypersonic weapons. If the new glide vehicle is indeed a cost-reduced version, as analysts suspect, we could see a dramatic increase in the number of these weapons in China's inventory. This would shift the challenge from dealing with a limited number of highly capable weapons to confronting a large-scale deployment that could overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numbers. The implications for naval operations are particularly severe. Aircraft carriers, the centerpiece of U.S. power projection capability, may need to operate much farther from contested areas than previously planned. This increases logistics challenges, reduces sortie rates for carrier-based aircraft, and potentially creates gaps in coverage that adversaries could exploit. The entire concept of forward deployment may require fundamental reconsideration in light of these weapons. For those who served in the military, particularly in the Navy, the DF-17 represents the kind of technological leap that fundamentally changes how we think about warfare. It's comparable to the introduction of radar, guided missiles, or nuclear weapons, which are developments that forced complete reassessment of tactics, strategy, and force structure. The comfortable assumptions about missile defense, reaction times, and engagement envelopes that guided military planning for decades no longer apply. The March 8, 2026 unveiling of this new DF-17 variant marks not just another milestone in Chinese weapons development, but a clear signal that hypersonic weapons have moved from experimental technology to operational reality. The strategic balance in the Pacific has shifted, and the implications of that shift are still being calculated in war rooms and planning centers around the world. What's certain is that the era of unchallenged U.S. military dominance in the Western Pacific has come to an end, and the DF-17 is the weapon that ended it.